My daughter, Lily, had just started kindergarten when my mother-in-law, Sarah, immediately came to urge me to have a second child, saying she was ready to help take care of the new baby. I just scoffed. When I was pregnant with our first child, she said exactly the same thing. And what was the result? Before Lily was born, she was as strong as an ox, effortlessly uprooting willow trees. Yet, after I gave birth, suddenly every part of her body had a problem, so gravely ill that even a miracle doctor couldn't cure her. And still, she had the audacity to push me for another child. When she couldn't persuade me, she turned to my husband, Liam. Liam, so obedient to his mother, went as far as threatening divorce, pressuring me to have a second child. I retorted, "Fine, let's divorce then. Anyone who's afraid to divorce is a coward." On Lily's 5th birthday, Liam and I had a huge fight. The reason was that he and his mother wanted me to have another child. Because of this, they even ganged up to brainwash our daughter, pushing her to beg me for a sibling. When Lily made her birthday wish, she looked at me and said, "Mommy, my birthday wish this year is to have a baby brother next year. Can you help me?" Help you do what? I was about to tell her about the terrible things that come with a new sibling when Liam, standing beside us, grandly interjected, "Mommy and Daddy will definitely help you make that wish come true." After Lily went to sleep, Liam and I had another big fight. Finally, he blurted out, "Victoria, if you keep refusing to have a second child, then let's get a divorce." I was stunned for a moment, then nodded without a second's hesitation. Divorce it is. Anyone who doesn't go through with it is a coward. After I agreed to the divorce, Liam looked at me in disbelief. "Victoria, are you crazy? You're actually agreeing to divorce over such a small matter." I wanted to laugh from sheer indignation. He was the one who demanded a divorce first, and now he was blaming me. I shot back. "A small matter? You and your mother say having another child is easy. I haven't even mentioned that our current financial situation is only enough to raise one child. I'll just ask you this. After I give birth to the second child, will you quit your job to take care of them, or will it be like before, making me quit my job to care for them?" The more I spoke, the angrier I became. I've just finished raising our daughter, and now I can finally go back to work. If I have another child now, I'll be delayed for several more years. Liam, I tell you, don't even think about it. Liam rubbed his forehead, irritable. "My mother said she'd definitely help take care of them after you give birth." I scoffed again. I didn't believe a single word of what Liam said. Why? Oh, because when I gave birth to our first child, his mother said exactly the same thing. And what was the result? The night Lily was born, his mother suddenly fell gravely ill. I remember clearly, before I even got pregnant, my mother-in-law, Sarah, had sweetly coaxed me. "Victoria, don't worry. After you give birth and finish your confinement, you can go back to work whenever you want. I'm retired, so I'll help you too with the baby. Plus, your father-in-law still earns money, so he'll handle the finances after the baby is born, and I'll handle the care. It won't affect your quality of life at all. We promise." I was young then, and had never been played by my mother-in-law, so I believed her. Besides, Liam and I had no intention of not having children, so in our second year of marriage, I gave birth to our daughter, Lily. And then what? Sarah immediately put on a show worthy of a Sichuan opera, changing her face completely. She had uterine fibroids for over a decade, but never bothered to get checked. Yet, the very next day after I gave birth to Lily, she went for an examination and quickly scheduled surgery within 3 days. When I was discharged and returned home for confinement, she was recuperating in the hospital. I came from a single-parent family. My mother passed away when I was very young. Afterward, my father remarried and had children with his new wife, showing almost no interest in me. Was I supposed to ask my stepmother to help me during confinement? Postpartum care centers cost tens of millions, and at that time, Liam and I had just gotten married and bought a house. Where would we get that kind of money? So, throughout my confinement, only Liam took care of me. While tending to me, he also had to rush to the hospital to visit his mother, Sarah, who had just had surgery and was still hospitalized. Meanwhile, Liam only had half a month of leave. When he returned to work, I had to take care of Lily myself, right in the middle of my confinement period. If I was hungry, I'd order takeout. And yet, Sarah still called Liam, blaming me for not even bothering to call and check on her after her surgery, saying I had no conscience. Hearing that, I was so furious I wanted to laugh hysterically. After my confinement ended, Sarah used the excuse of needing time to recover to completely forget all the promises she made before Lily was born. No money, no help. When my maternity leave ended and I was preparing to go back to work, she still claimed her body was weak and hadn't recovered. When Liam called directly to ask if she could come and help look after Lily, she immediately burst into tears on the phone, crying and scolding him. "Liam, has your conscience been eaten by dogs? I just had surgery not long ago, and the doctor strictly warned me for half a year not to lift heavy things or do strenuous work. You won't come home to take care of me, but you expect me, a patient, to go take care of your children. I worked so hard to raise you. Now you're married with children and still can't be independent, forcing a sick mother to care for your household. Are you an ungrateful child?" Before my husband could even react after her tirade, his father snatched the phone and continued the scolding. "You can't manage your wife, and you can't manage your child. You two are almost 30 years old. Can't you understand such a simple thing? If you didn't have the means to have children back then, why did you have them? Are you now dumping all the responsibility on your mother? Does your mother owe you something?" Liam was thoroughly scolded by his parents, not daring to refute anything. He could only turn to me, negotiating and asking me to quit my job to stay home and care for our daughter. At that time, we had no savings, and our salaries weren't high. His salary was 7 million VND, mine was 6 million VND, and our monthly house loan payment was 3 million VND. Adding other expenses for our child, it wasn't even enough to hire a nanny. After considering all options, I reluctantly quit my job to stay home and raise Lily. It wasn't until Lily started kindergarten that I could finally go back to work. And now, after years of hardship, I finally stabilized my career. Life was just starting to get into a rhythm when Sarah came creeping back, urging me to have another child. One should look at themselves before demanding things from others. And this wasn't even the first time she pushed for a second child. When Lily was 3 years old, she had already started demanding I have another. But each time, I flatly refused, giving her no opportunity. Back then, Liam's cousin had just had his second child, and we were at the full-month celebration party. Sarah took the opportunity to corner me and pressure me to have another baby. "Victoria, Lily is 3 years old now. You two should really have another child. Children need siblings. Being alone makes them so lonely. Later, when she grows up and sees other families with siblings having fun, little Lily will be so envious." In my generation, if we could have children freely, I would have had 3, not just Liam. When you have few children, you have to raise them anyway. Raising one child is like raising 2. They'll grow up in the blink of an eye. I couldn't even be bothered to reply, pretending to be deaf as if I hadn't heard anything. It sounds easy enough. 2 children make for a happy home, but the days I struggled alone with our child, without even time to eat, still send shivers down my spine just thinking about them. Seeing my lack of reaction, Sarah became angry and dragged all the attending relatives from the Lee family to pressure me, offering their advice. But they were just like her, all talk and no action. They advised, "Victoria, your mother-in-law isn't wrong. The more children you have, the happier you'll be later. At most, you'll only suffer for the first few years, just bear with it and it'll pass. Besides, your in-laws are still healthy and can help. What are you afraid of?" I had originally intended to hold back out of respect for the large crowd, not wanting to argue. But hearing those words, recalling Sarah's true colors before and after I gave birth, my anger surged to my head. I couldn't hold back anymore and retorted directly, "What kind of help does my mother-in-law provide? Help with her mouth. Before I gave birth to Lily, she also said exactly what you all are saying now. When it came to children, she just told me to give birth, and she and my husband would help raise them later. And what was the result? Before I gave birth to Lily, my mother-in-law was strong as an ox, effortlessly pulling out even birch trees. Yet just one day after Lily was born, she immediately fell gravely ill and had to be hospitalized for surgery. After the surgery, every part of her body had problems. Her condition was so severe that even a miracle doctor couldn't save her. From the moment Lily was born until now, my in-laws have not only failed to provide financial or practical help, but have also turned around to criticize my husband and me for being incapable of raising a child, asking why we insisted on having one. Right after giving birth, I had to listen to them provoke me with all sorts of things. Their two-faced hypocrisy was exposed for all to see. And now they come again, urging me to have a second child. What right do they have? And all you relatives, meddling in other people's family matters. If you're so good at meddling, why don't you all chip in 500 million VND so I can confidently have another child? My mother-in-law's relatives were struck speechless by my words. No one dared to say anything else. But when we got home, Liam blamed me for not preserving his parents' dignity at his cousin's full-month party. He said, "Wife, can you try to be less hot-tempered? So many relatives were there. What you said made my parents lose so much face. Didn't you see how their faces darkened?" I glared at him. "Liam, if you can still speak like a human, then say a few words. Otherwise, shut your mouth. I haven't even blamed you yet. You didn't even say a word in my defense in front of them, and you dare to blame me for not respecting your parents' dignity. If your parents still had any shame, they wouldn't have pushed me to have a second child in front of so many people. If they have no shame, why should I respect them? Do you want me to get breast fibroids from anger?" I continued, "What did I say wrong? After Lily was born, did your parents make things difficult for me?" Liam fell silent. Perhaps he remembered when Lily was 6 months old. At that time, I was forced to stay home and care for our child by myself. Initially, it was somewhat manageable, though incredibly difficult, with my hair falling out in clumps. But at least every evening, Liam would come home to help me with Lily and household chores. We struggled together, but we were still happy. I thought then that life was ours, the three of us, and overcoming it together was better than constant complaining. Until Lily turned 6 months old and fell ill, running a fever for several days straight. Liam went to work during the day, and I couldn't stay overnight at the hospital with her. I was alone at the hospital day and night, so exhausted I felt dizzy. Thinking Sarah had recovered from her illness, I asked Liam to call and ask her to help for a few days. At first, Sarah readily agreed over the phone, but her presence was nowhere to be seen. That afternoon, Liam called her again, and she immediately scolded him relentlessly for several minutes without pause. "Liam, you truly are an ungrateful wretch. You think your wife is tired from staying up all night, but your mother isn't tired? Your wife is young and healthy. She can endure it. But how old am I this year? I just had surgery half a year ago. The doctor strictly warned me for half a year not to lift heavy things or do strenuous work. You won't come home to take care of me, and you're making me go take care of your children. I worked so hard to raise you. Now you're married with children and still can't be independent, forcing a sick mother to care for your household. Are you an ungrateful child? The hospital is full of bacteria and viruses. I'm old. What if I get infected?" Liam dared not speak. After her scolding, Sarah hung up. Liam turned to look at me, helplessly saying, "All right, wife, I'll take the first half of the night, and you take the second half." I didn't say anything, only remembered the sound of mahjong tiles clacking on the other end of the line just before Sarah hung up. But I was too exhausted, so for the first time since we got married, I called my biological father, begging him to come and help for a few days. The result was as expected. My father scolded me fiercely and didn't come. In truth, my father had never approved of me dating Liam from the start. Not because Liam was a bad person, but because my father wanted me to marry a relative from my stepmother's side, someone 10 years older than me, uneducated, and with no stable job, all because he wanted to curry favor with my stepmother. I absolutely refused. Moreover, at that time, Liam and I were deeply in love. It was a voluntary relationship. We met when we were 23, fresh out of college. Our story began from playing the same mobile game. After a few months of chatting in the game, he suggested we meet. Since we lived in the same city and it wasn't too far, I agreed. We met and gradually became friends. Then, a few months later, I started to develop feelings for him. I had acute appendicitis. In the middle of the night, the pain was so severe I was delirious. In my delirium, I called him. He immediately took me to the hospital in the middle of the night, stayed by my side during the surgery, and took care of me until I was discharged. That April, when he confessed his feelings for me, saying he liked me, I agreed without a second thought. We were together for 3 years. He always kept his emotions stable, discussed everything with me, and we rarely argued. So at 27, we smoothly got married. Where we live, there's no custom of a bride price, and house prices aren't too expensive. We pooled all our savings, each contributing over 10 million VND, bought a small old house, and got married. Therefore, after I disobeyed my father and married Liam instead of my stepmother's relative, my father almost lost all intention of visiting me. I accepted it because having a stepmother meant having a stepfather's perspective from my father. When both families were indifferent to the wedding, I still tried to be fair to Liam. If his parents didn't come, neither did my father. Liam hugged me, heartbroken, and said, "Wife, you've been through so much, but the trouble doesn't end there." 3 months after Lily recovered from her illness, my father-in-law fell at work and had to be hospitalized for surgery, requiring round-the-clock care. This was when Sarah finally remembered me. She called, asking me to take turns with her caring for my father-in-law. She said casually, "Victoria, your father-in-law had a bad fall. I can't manage alone. I can't stay up all night. You take my place at the hospital tonight, and I'll stay home and watch Lily sleep." When I needed her help, she was busy playing cards and couldn't be bothered to even check on me. Now that she needed help, she casually asked. Unbelievable nerve. I refused, even using her own words against her. "The hospital is full of bacteria. What if I get infected? I still have a small child to care for, and I can't rely on any of you for help." Sarah, rejected by me, immediately erupted in a furious tirade. "Victoria, do you have any conscience? He's still your father-in-law, after all. It's only natural for children and grandchildren to care for their elders." She had such nerve, how could I just take it? I immediately shot back. "Sarah, when I needed you, you vanished without a trace. Now that you need me, you come back to preach morality. Haven't you looked in the mirror to see how many faces you have to say such shameless things?" I continued, "I have to take care of him. Am I supposed to take care of your parents too? Get out." After scolding her, I blocked and deleted all contact with her. The next day, because I didn't go to the hospital to help care for my father-in-law and also blocked her, Sarah posted several messages in the family group chat like, "Unfilial daughter-in-law abandoned by husband," and "Daughter-in-law refused to care for in-laws, meeting a tragic end," and so on. I responded with posts like, "In-laws who don't help daughter-in-law raise children will die alone and unburied," and "Mother-in-law who bullies daughter-in-law will be struck down by heaven," then left the group. Eventually, Liam was called home by his mother to care for his father for half a month. Only then did things calm down. From then on, I almost completely cut ties with Sarah. Except for family gatherings, I only reluctantly accompanied Liam. As for holidays, I absolutely never went to my mother-in-law's house. If she came to my house, out of respect for my husband, I wouldn't kick her out, but I wouldn't bother talking to her either. Later, as Lily grew older and easier to raise, Liam began to selectively forget how his parents had treated me, how they had scolded us. He even defended his parents to me. At the time Lily was born, my mother really was having surgery, and my father didn't make us spend any money, so that's good enough, right? He paused, then said, "Anyway, they are my parents, and we are their children. Should we really hold a grudge forever just because they made a small mistake? Besides, it was a long time ago. What's the point of you constantly dwelling on it?" I replied, "It asterisk does have a point. Don't worry, I will remember it until I die, and I will never forget. Liam, I will never forget how cold Sarah, my father-in-law, and even my own father were after Lily was born. When I was struggling alone, on the verge of collapsing from caring for our child, no one cared. When I was so busy I couldn't even eat, no one offered a helping hand. Even when our child was sick, and I couldn't manage alone, they scolded me as if slapping me in the face. Now that our child is older, I'm finally getting a little relief. What right do they have to come and pressure me to have another child? What right do they have to interfere in our lives?" Liam was left speechless by my words, not daring to say anything more about having another child. But Sarah, after her first attempt to pressure me failed, still didn't give up. Half a year later, she returned with a new plan to urge me for a second child. This time, she was even more thoroughly prepared. To get me to agree to have another child, she even humbled herself and came to apologize to me for past events. She came to our house, apologized, and then spoke to both of us. "Liam, Victoria, when you two had Lily, I was truly sick and couldn't help, but now my health has recovered, and I can help you two take care of the child." She continued, "How about this? I'll come over and help you two with Lily, and you can both go to work as usual. I'll cook, clean, and pick up drop-off Lily from school. That way, you two won't be so tired." Seeing that Liam seemed to be considering it, I immediately refused before he could even open his mouth. "No need. Lily's school hours now coincide with our work hours. Besides, your mother's health isn't good to begin with. If she comes to help and gets sick from exhaustion, it will ultimately fall back on us. We wouldn't dare trouble such a frail goddess. Sarah reluctantly backed down. I don't know what she said to Liam afterward. Just a few days later, he started picking fights with me, saying I looked down on his family, looked down on his mother, and that I wouldn't even let his mother help with the child. He even brought up old issues. Didn't you also hope my mother would come help with Lily before? Now that she wants to come, you're acting difficult. If my mother comes, she can cook and watch the child, and we'd be less tired, right? What's wrong with my mother coming? Can't you be a little more reasonable? I couldn't be bothered to argue with his ridiculous morality. I just coldly replied, in this house, if your mother is here, I won't be. You choose. Liam finally shut up then. It was months later that I finally understood why Liam, who had always stood by me, had suddenly been won over by Sarah. It turned out Sarah had used the tactic of securing one's old age to brainwash him. If Liam and I didn't have a son, no one would take care of Liam in his old age. Sarah even used me as an example to manipulate him. Liam, if you and your wife don't have another son, you'll suffer greatly when you're old. Look at your father-in-law. His daughter got married. How often does she come back home? Does she care about him? Not to mention giving him money. People always say daughters are like spilled water. Once they're married, they become part of another family. After Lily gets married, what will our family get from her? It's a good thing your father-in-law was smart. As soon as your wife's mother passed away, he married a new wife and had a son right away. If he had only relied on your wife for care, no one would know when he died. Don't say your father-in-law didn't treat your wife well. He still raised her to adulthood. If you don't pressure your wife to have a son, you'll end up dying alone in old age, just like your father-in-law. Your wife is just putting on an act now, saying she has no money and no energy to have more children. But in our grandparents' time, they were much poorer, and every family still had 3, 4, even 7 or 8 children. Did anyone die from poverty? Your wife keeps complaining about being tired, lacking money and energy, but Lily still grew up to be 4 years old, didn't she? After her lengthy speech, she concluded, Liam, I am your biological mother. Do you think I would harm you? I say all these things because I want what's best for you. And I found out about this because I accidentally saw Sarah's messages to Liam. That day, I was sitting with Lily in the living room. Liam went to shower, leaving his phone in the room, and it kept ringing. I accidentally glanced at it. As soon as I opened it, I saw several messages she had sent. I scrolled up out of curiosity and saw that the content was all the same: coaxing, moralizing, blaming. Initially, Liam had responded coldly, "You didn't help when our first child was born. Please don't push for another now." But Sarah kept sending messages, kept drilling it in. Finally, his tone changed. "Let me talk to my wife and see." Liam came out of the shower and saw me holding his phone. He saw the messages and immediately flared up, scolding me. "Why are you looking through my phone? You're not respecting my privacy. What kind of a joke is it if a husband and wife act like this?" I gave a bitter laugh. A joke indeed. From the time we got married until Lily was born, we both struggled, lacked money, and were exhausted, and your mother didn't help at all. Now, with just a few words, your mother has turned you against me. At that moment, looking at Liam, who was starting to become a stranger, I suddenly realized that even though we had shared sweetness and bitterness together, in the end, we couldn't stand against his mother's instigation. After all, she was his biological mother, and blood runs deep. So at that time, I already had the intention of divorcing. But looking at my daughter, who was only 4.5 years old, I still couldn't bring myself to say the cruel words. In truth, Liam hadn't treated Lily and me badly. In the early years when Lily was small, he worked just as hard. Over the years, from caring for her, educating her, to her schooling, he was never absent. But at this point, seeing his irritated face, I suddenly felt that we couldn't continue living together. He wanted to listen to his mother, didn't see reality clearly, didn't consider our capabilities, and was determined to have another child. If I didn't give birth, he'd threaten divorce, even letting our daughter pressure me to have another. Well then, let's just get divorced quickly. I won't hinder his suffering, and he shouldn't hinder my chance at a little peace. However, when I actually suggested divorce, Liam didn't want it anymore. He apologized. "Honey, I'm sorry, I only said that in anger. Lily is only 5 years old. If we really divorce, she'll be the one who suffers most. Can you pretend you didn't hear me say divorce?" Seeing my silence, he quickly added, "From now on, I won't talk about divorce anymore, and I won't bring up having another child either." I thought that as long as his mother didn't keep instigating him, we could still live peacefully together. So, I accepted his apology, and we lived harmoniously for a few days. But it didn't last long before we argued again, because Liam didn't want a divorce, but he also didn't give up his intention of having a second child. On the contrary, he pressured me even more intensely. To force me to have a child, he resorted to tricks. After our big fight on Lily's birthday, he pretended to coax me, saying he wouldn't push for another child and wouldn't divorce. I thought he had seen reason, understood that we couldn't afford another child, and had given up. Even though I was working again, we still had an outstanding house loan. Liam had been promoted these past few years, earning over 10 million VND, and I, working in sales, earned about 7-8 million VND. But factoring in the house payment, Lily's tuition, extracurricular classes, and living expenses, we barely saved 10 million VND each year. If we faced a major illness, we'd be ruined. Under such conditions, why have another child? If we did, someone would have to quit their job for several years again, our quality of life would plummet, and the second child wouldn't even have a decent life. But Liam didn't think about any of that. It turned out his promise not to have another child was just a delaying tactic. In April, incited by Sarah, he started playing tricks with condoms. Sarah taught him to target my ovulation days and invite me out for drinks. At the same time, without asking my opinion, she took Lily to her house to stay, with a clear purpose. Even stranger, after 2 failures, Sarah saw that I was still resolute in not having a child, so she devised another scheme. She told Liam to transfer his entire monthly salary to her, under the pretext of supporting his parents. Sarah told Liam, "Now your wife thinks she's so important because you give her all your money. She probably thinks you can't have another child without her. If you don't stop her, she'll soon walk all over you. Transfer your salary to me, we won't take it. We'll save it for you. Whenever she agrees to have a child, we'll return it all." Liam must have been blinded by his desire for a child. He actually followed her instructions. He transferred his monthly salary to his parents, and so we argued again. I scolded him for breaking his promises, for not keeping his word. He, in turn, blamed me for being selfish, for wanting to live comfortably and refusing to have more children, for not giving an unborn child a chance to see the world. He even brought up the incident of Sarah watching Lily for a day as proof. Now my mother has shown sincerity, willing to help with the child. Lily was happy with her, right? If we have another, my mother will help again, and you can still go to work as usual. After hearing him, I cursed directly. Happy, my ****. When I was exhausted to death, your mother didn't lift a finger. Now she wants me to lie down again, so she puts on a show. I don't need that fake kindness. And stop dragging your mother into this. Hearing her name makes me nauseous. I was foolish once, but that was enough. I won't fall into that trap a second time. You truly have something wrong in your head. Liam was even angrier than me. He said, "Victoria, didn't my mother only not help you with Lily when you gave birth? And that story also had a clear reason, didn't it? We've managed to live all these years, haven't we? Plus, my mother has already apologized to you. Why do you keep bringing her up? Do you expect her to kneel and apologize before you forgive her?" I looked at his angry face and suddenly lost all desire to argue. I fully understood that he had been successfully brainwashed by Sarah. Or perhaps, deep down, he was inherently like her, favoring sons over daughters, always wanting a son, he just hadn't voiced it before. Now that Sarah was pushing for a second child, he had an excuse to insist on having one. No matter how much I analyzed that our financial conditions weren't sufficient and our circumstances weren't suitable, it was all useless. I could imagine that if I conceded and had a second child, not only my life, but also Lily's space to thrive would be suffocated and miserable. Initially, I still wanted to keep our family intact for Lily's sake. Liam and I once had feelings for each other, so I didn't want a divorce. But looking back now, if I continued to live with him, Lily's future would only get worse day by day. Sooner or later, we would argue to the point of being sick of each other. I couldn't abandon my daughter for a misguided goal. Therefore, I decided to let go, stop fighting, and truly commit to divorce. I took a deep breath and calmly told Liam, "We've been married for over 5 years, and I've tasted enough hardship. Now that I finally have a bit of peace in my life, you want to push me into the abyss again. I'm not your family's baby-making machine. Marrying you wasn't to shoulder all this suffering." I paused for a moment. "If you want to be your mother's obedient son, then let's get a divorce." I was calm, but Liam was not. He screamed, "Victoria, don't keep threatening me with divorce every time we argue. Let me tell you, if you really divorce me, I will never give up custody of our child. Don't even think about it." I smiled faintly. "Weren't you the one who first threatened me with divorce? And this time, I'm not threatening, I've thought it through. You've even handed over your salary to your mother and started transferring joint assets. So why bother living with me anymore? Go live with your mother. I won't stand in the way of your deep mother-son bond." Liam's face turned red with anger, but divorcing him was indeed complicated. For this house, we each contributed half of the down payment, and we still had over 20 years of mortgage left. I certainly wouldn't give up this house just to divorce. As for our savings, 200 million VND was in my possession. Fighting for custody was also a big problem. Liam deliberately tried to force me to raise Lily alone, hoping I would yield and agree to have a second child. But it was okay, I had my own trick. A few days later, I went to the hospital and got a surgical consent form. When Liam saw the paper, he went ballistic, yelling at me, "Victoria, are you crazy?" I wasn't being polite. "You wanting me to have another child is what's crazy. This is my body. I have the right to decide whether or not to give birth." That paper not only drove Liam mad but also Sarah. She immediately rushed to my house, crying hysterically. "Victoria, do you want our Lee family to have no descendants?" I glanced at her. "The Lee family? Are you a Lee? What nonsense." I added, "This house was bought by Liam and me. You have no right to step foot in it." Sarah was so angry she clutched her chest and collapsed onto a chair, wiping away tears as she complained to her son. "Liam, look at what kind of wife you married. She dared to speak to me like that. Before, I used to save her face and never scolded her in public. But now, there was no need for politeness. I pointed directly at her. "Sarah, do you even have the audacity to ask what kind of wife I am? Why don't you ask yourself what kind of mother-in-law you are? You don't help, but you're always present for gossip and trouble. All day long, you pressure me to have more children. I had one child, and you suffered from uterine fibroids for several years. If I have another, you'll probably just die of cancer already. And you even made your son give you his entire salary. If you want to control your son's finances so much, why don't you divorce your husband and marry your son instead? You two still want to have another child, don't you? Perfect match." The angrier I got, the more I spoke. I pulled her up from the chair, pointed to the door, and screamed, "Get out of my house. Just looking at you makes me sick." Sarah still refused to leave, continuing to cry to Liam. "Son, your wife is not only ungrateful but also a barren woman. Why are you still living with her? Divorce her. Divorce her right now." "Yes, please do. I couldn't ask for more," I continued, adding fuel to Sarah's fire. Right. In this world, you're probably the only hen who knows how to lay eggs, laying a scoundrel like Liam." Sarah and Liam finally couldn't take it anymore. Liam, exasperated, said, "Victoria, can you please stop talking for a bit?" "No, I can't." I rediscovered the vigor I had years ago when arguing with my stepmother, scolding both Liam and his mother, getting more vulgar with each word, even cursing with anatomical references. Forgetting all about saving face today, I was determined to argue until we divorced. An hour later, after I had defeated the mother and son in a 2-on-1 battle, Liam yelled, "Victoria, divorce then? Do you think I still need you that much? I've put up with your temperament enough over the years. You're like a hedgehog, so difficult to get along with. No wonder your parents couldn't stand you. After marrying me, you ran away like an orphan. Do you think anyone else would tolerate you after we divorce?" I was furious. It's true that the person who knows your past best can hurt you the most. But thanks to that argument, Liam and I finally officially discussed divorce. The division of assets was simple. Liam said he didn't want the house because he hated that it was old and still had decades of mortgage left. He only wanted all the post-marital savings. I agreed. Only child custody was an issue. He wouldn't give in. "If our daughter follows you, won't she just become an unlikable hedgehog like you?" I thought for 7 days and finally decided to give custody to Liam. I would provide child support and have visitation rights. After all, he was Lily's father and had never mistreated her over the years. But I had to learn to love myself first. If I didn't divorce, I would sink into the abyss again. For our daughter, having a mother who constantly lost her temper might not be a good thing. Moreover, if Liam remarried, his stepmother would certainly not want to raise her husband's child. At that point, custody would return to me, so I would wait. I thought that after we argued to this extent, no one would want to see each other's faces again. But a month later, as we both walked out of the divorce registration office, Liam, his eyes red, asked me, "Victoria, we clearly loved each other so much. How did it come to divorce?" His question brought back memories of our entire 10-year journey of knowing and living together. And I had the answer, because I no longer wanted to endure. Looking back, ever since we got married, I had always had to endure. Initially, we planned to have children at 30 when our finances were stable. But his mother kept pushing, and then he said, "Anyway, we're going to have children. Why not have them early while my parents are still healthy and can help us? In a few years, they'll be old and weak and won't be able to help, and we'll struggle even more." So, I conceded and had Lily. After Lily was born, my mother-in-law went back on her word and refused to help with the child. We were forced to have someone stay home to care for her. At that time, his salary was higher than mine, and Lily was still breastfeeding. He said, "Wife, there's no other way. Our child is still young and we still have the house loan. You'll just have to endure the hardship of caring for her for a few years, okay? When she goes to school, you can go back to work." Thinking of our daughter and our future together, I endured again, becoming a housewife, living the darkest period of my life for over 2 years. When Lily started school, my mother-in-law and I had argued to the point of blocking each other, but Liam still tried to reconcile. "Anyway, my mother is still my mother. Try to bear with it for Lily's sake so she can have a complete family." For Lily, I conceded again. Although we couldn't be as harmonious as before, I didn't cause trouble or kick his mother out of the house. Now, he wanted me to concede once more, to have a second child, repeating the nightmare I had once lived. I refused to agree anymore, and so we divorced. I remembered why I once loved him, because when I was at my lowest, he reached out to help me. At that time, I thought he could be the sky that sheltered me. But after living with him for so many years, I realized that without him, my life had never experienced a storm. 3 years after my divorce from Victoria, I remarried Chloe. We met through a matchmaker and got married in less than a year. Because by then, I knew I couldn't salvage my marriage with Victoria anymore. In truth, when divorcing Victoria, I only intended to use the divorce and child custody to force her to have more children. I kept thinking we had been together for 10 years, our feelings were deep. And I still had custody of our daughter. Even if she didn't think of me, she had to think of our daughter's feelings, right? I thought that after we actually divorced, when she saw Lily unhappy, Victoria would agree to remarry and have a second child. But the month after our divorce, she immediately requested a transfer for a 2-year assignment. If she succeeded in helping the company establish a branch in a new city, she would be promoted. I called her, asking her to come back to visit Lily. She just said, "If you can't take care of Lily, then give custody back to me," then hung up. After that, she stopped answering my calls. My text messages were like stones thrown into the sea. Later, I found out she had actually planned to leave for a long time, only staying because we hadn't divorced and she had to drop off and pick up Lily. As soon as we divorced, she left. A few months later, she returned to visit our daughter for her birthday. I thought this was an opportunity to talk things over again. I immediately coaxed Lily to cry and complain that she hadn't been happy since her parents divorced. But no matter how much Lily cried, Victoria managed to soothe her with just a few words. Mother and daughter spent the entire birthday happily together, while I felt invisible. That evening, after Lily fell asleep, I intended to talk to Victoria, but as soon as I opened my mouth, she cut me off. "Liam, don't use these old tricks of using our child to soften me. I will not remarry you. Lily is my daughter and she's your daughter. Do you want to use your dirty intentions to ruin her?" she continued. "You once wouldn't give me custody because you were afraid she'd grow up to be like me, a hedgehog. But what are you doing now? Do you want to use our child to control me? If you can't distinguish between what's right and wrong, then let's go to court again. You can fight for custody. But don't even dream of remarrying me. Since divorcing you, my life has only gotten better and freer. No one constantly picks fights with me anymore. I won't go back to that life where I had to endure everything." That day, she spoke very harshly and left very decisively. From then on, except for visiting Lily and transferring child support money, she no longer contacted me. She never replied to my messages. My mother saw that more than a year had passed since my divorce from Victoria and I still hadn't remarried, so she started arranging blind dates for me. In truth, after the divorce, I did blame my mother a little. If it hadn't been for her constantly causing trouble with Victoria, harassing her, and making a fuss at home, we might not have divorced. But she was still my mother, after all, who had worked hard to raise me, so I couldn't cut ties with her. After I divorced, she also helped me with Lily, taking her to and from school. Moreover, my mother was very good at putting on a show, crying, throwing tantrums, and threatening suicide. Because of the divorce with Victoria, I had argued with my mother a few times. But before I could even finish my sentence, my mother would start crying, scolding me while weeping. "Liam, I'm your biological mother, not your enemy. Aren't I doing all this because I want what's best for you? Victoria wouldn't even have a second child. Do you want to end up without descendants like her?" As I said a few more words, my mother stood right by the window and screamed, "Liam, do you want to force your mother to die today to be satisfied?" I couldn't argue with her. It was utterly impossible. Finally, I had to listen to my mother and go on blind dates. Before meeting Chloe, I had been on 7 or 8 blind dates, most of which failed. Because I brought Lily along, those women, upon hearing I was divorced and raising a young child, would praise me as a good father on the surface, still caring for my child after divorce, but after the meeting, they'd vanish. Everyone was afraid of raising someone else's child. So, when Chloe didn't care about my divorce or having a child, we quickly fell in love. She was 4 years younger than me. Later, I found out the reason she liked me was that I resembled someone she once had a secret crush on. As for our marriage, it was a shotgun wedding, marrying because of an unplanned pregnancy. After we got married, Victoria returned from another city and occasionally attended Lily's school activities and parent-teacher meetings. When Chloe was 5 months pregnant, I attended Lily's parent-teacher meeting. Coincidentally, Victoria was also there. Afterward, Chloe saw Victoria's photo on social media, suspected I was using the parent-teacher meeting as an excuse to see Victoria again, and caused a huge scene, forcing me to transfer custody of Lily back to Victoria. Ever since she became pregnant, her emotions had been unstable. To appease her, I had to agree to transfer custody. Of course, it was also partly because my mother no longer wanted to pick up and drop off Lily from school. She said, "Victoria won't come back to you anyway, so why bother me with watching your child? I'm old, my health isn't good." In the hot summer, walking around can easily lead to high blood pressure and heat stroke. Now that Chloe is pregnant, I'll have to watch her baby later. How will I have time for Lily? When Chloe and I got married, my mother had promised to help us with the baby. But in the first month after Chloe gave birth, my mother was hospitalized for a week due to exhaustion and high blood pressure. My father wouldn't let her continue helping. Chloe's mother, meanwhile, had to help her brother take care of his children and couldn't assist us. In the end, Chloe had to quit her job to stay home and care for the baby. When Daisy was over 2 years old, my mother started pushing for a second child again, calling and crying hysterically, saying that not having another would be like ending our lineage. She bothered me to the point of irritation. I also have to admit I'm somewhat like my mother, with a preference for sons, and I really hoped for a son, so I let Chloe get pregnant without discussing it first. Initially, Chloe intended to have an abortion, and her mother also agreed, saying our financial condition was only enough to raise 1 child, and 2 would be too difficult. But when my mother found out Chloe was pregnant, she immediately came to persuade her. "Just have the baby. Even if I can't help, I'll give you a few million VND each month to hire help." My mother and I both convinced Chloe to keep the pregnancy. She thought about it for a long time, probably also influenced by pregnancy hormones, and finally couldn't bring herself to abort, so she gave birth. However, the second child was also a girl. Chloe asked my mother to come help with the children, but my mother refused and didn't give the promised money either. My mother said, "1 child is caring, 2 children are caring. Why do you need a whole bunch of people fussing around kids? You're just being weak and putting on an act." Chloe was so angry she almost spat blood. My mother and I also had a big argument. But no matter what I said, my mother kept repeating the same old lines. "It's not a boy, I'm not paying. Staying home to care for children is easy, why do you need money?" My mother even started urging us to have a 3rd child. Because my mother's promises were never fulfilled, Chloe had several big arguments with me. During one argument, I also lost my temper and blurted out, "The children are ours. Why do you keep fixating on my mother? You managed to care for Daisy, the older one, so why can't you care for Rosie, the younger one? And so, on the third day after her confinement ended, when I came home from work, she handed the children over to me, took her bank card and ID, and left without a word. I called her only to find all my contacts blocked. I went to her biological mother's house, but she showed no sympathy, merely saying, "I don't know where my daughter went. If you don't know, how would I know?" When I asked again, she slapped me directly and said, "Didn't I tell you before? With your family's financial situation, one child is enough, two is impossible to raise. You and my daughter got married, bought a house, renovated it partly with our money. Now you're still in debt and you have another child. Both big and small need care. My daughter hasn't been able to work for 10 years, your mother is frail and can't help, and you're not capable enough to provide for the whole family. If you don't have the means, don't try so hard. Yet you and your mother kept coaxing my daughter to have another child. She was blindly obedient and didn't listen to me. Now that she's given birth, your mother hasn't fulfilled any of her promises. No help, no money. You and your mother ganged up to bully my daughter. I haven't even settled scores with you two yet. And now you come asking me where my daughter is? How would I know? Get out." After Chloe left, I still had to go to work. Meanwhile, there were 2 children at home who needed care. If I hired a nanny, after deducting all the living expenses for the 2 little ones, my salary wouldn't be enough. I asked my mother for a little help to hire someone, but my mother refused, thinking I was wasting money unnecessarily. Finally, after several days of arguing, my mother reluctantly came to my house to care for the children, but after a short time, she couldn't handle it. My mother was old, her health was not what it used to be, and she suffered from high blood pressure, frequent dizziness, and fatigue. I also didn't have time to take her to the doctor. I thought I'd wait until Rosie was a little older and easier to care for, then I'd take her for a full checkup. But my mother couldn't wait that long. She only cared for the children for half a year before she had a cerebral hemorrhage due to too many late nights and passed away. After my mother died, Chloe returned to demand a divorce and took our elder daughter, Daisy, with her. She said, "I still have to work. I can't raise a baby only half a year old. You figure out how to overcome the difficulties and raise her until she goes to school." As we walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau after finalizing the divorce, she glanced at me and said, "Didn't your mother say that caring for one child is like caring for two? How come she couldn't care for 2 children and ended up going to the other side like that? And you still wanted to have more sons, 3 sons. What for? To end up like you, driving your own mother to her death? Yeah."